Hello everybody, this is Graeme Anderson, and today I'm going to be looking at Thieves Den. Now I must say one of the first things that caught my eye for this game is this gorgeous cover. And then I read the back of the box about being master thieves trying to steal treasures, then selling them to different underworld fences, or offloading it to the local witch to try and raise your reputation to become the next big boss of Amaranth. You know what? Okay, I'm interested. The main mechanisms are card drafting, worker placement, and set collection. Now that sounds like a lot of other games, and that might not be a bad thing. But what made this game more interesting for me was the mechanism of being able to use an action spot someone else owns, but then they get your worker for the next round. But you can always hire new workers for yourself. And for me, that made this one I had to get to the table. So, does this game rise above the crowd, or does this fade into the background? Let's get it to the table, see how it's played, and we'll come back for my final thoughts on Thieves Den. Here's Thieves Den set up for 3 players. Each player gets their own player board and score marker of their color placed on the 0 on the scoring track. Each player also gets 3 thieves placed on their player board, and each player will be dealt 1 scheme card, which is a special end of game scoring. The location cards are shuffled and placed off to the board, then the fence cards are shuffled and the top 6 are dealt face up along the right side of the board. Place 3 thieves per player in the forest supply, then a number of treasure tokens based on the number of players go into the treasure supply. Next, place 3 stacks of 3 power tiles and turn the top ones face up on each pile. Then the first player will get the direction tile with the 1 and 3 face up. Now the goal of the game is to get the most prestige points by the end of the game. You'll get prestige points mainly through selling stolen treasures to the fences, by completing your scheme cards, and by having the most fences of different types at the end of the game. Let's have a quick look at the cards before we get into gameplay. The location cards are the locations the thieves will go to steal treasures. They have a name and an ability. If there's a lightning bolt, when that card is revealed during Phase 1, you'll perform that action right away. If there's a hexagon, it means that it will be a location a thief can activate later on. All locations are open to all players, but if you own the card and an opponent activates your card, you'll get the owner bonus as found in the top right of a card. Finally, there is the location type. There are 5 different types, and they are used for completing your scheme cards. The fence cards will have the treasure the fence wants. There will be an action spot to place the thief to sell to the fence, and the number of prestige points the fence will give you for the treasures. There will also be a fence type. At the end of the game, there are 7 different types that will score based on who has the most of each type. Your scheme cards will be kept secret from the other players, but will be end of game scoring. They will show you 2 location types, and depending on the number of sets you have at the end of the game, you will get that many prestige points. Now let's quickly look at your player board. There are 8 treasure chests on your board. This is where you're going to be storing up to 8 treasures. If you ever get more than 8, you must discard down to 8. There are also 6 seats for your thieves. You can only have a maximum of 6 thieves sitting at any one time. The table in the middle is where your scheme card is placed. You can look at it any time, but it is kept secret from the other players. At the end of each round, you'll place your face down location cards to the left of your player board and face down fence cards to the right. Now, the game is played over 3 rounds, and each round is made up of 3 phases. First is the scouting phase. Deal 4 cards to each player. Each player will select one of these cards and place it face down. When all the players have done that, reveal the face down cards and pass the rest of the cards in the direction of the direction token. If any of the revealed cards have a lightning bolt, perform that action right away and place the card into your location pile next to your player board. Continue until all players have 3 location cards in front of them. The last unselected location card goes to the bottom of the location deck. Next is the Thieving Phase, and this is the main phase of the game. This phase will last until all players have passed. Once you have passed, you are out of the round and cannot be the targeted of any actions. Let's quickly go through the actions you can do during this phase. First, you can steal from a location. Place one of your thieves on an empty action space on a location card and activate the ability of the card. The thief will stay there until the end of the round. If you place your thief on an opponent's location card, the opponent will gain the owner bonus to the top right of the location card. You can also fence treasures for an action. Select one of the 6 face-up fence cards, discard the matching treasures from your player board, then place the fence card in front of you with one of your thieves on the action space. Immediately gain the number of prestige points from your fence card, then draw and place a new fence card. For an action, you can use one of the power tiles. Place any treasure from your player board on an empty spot and perform the action. You can deliver treasures to the witch for an action. Place one of the treasures from your player board to the matching empty space on the witch's spot and receive that many prestige points. You can burgle treasures. That is, exchange 2 thieves from your player board to get 1 treasure from the supply. Note that supplies are limited. If there are no treasures of a certain type in the supply, you cannot get any more of that treasure. Lastly, you can recruit a thief. Pay 2 treasures from your board and receive a thief. As with treasures, the thieves are in limited supply. Now, almost all actions on the board can only be performed once per round, with the exception of the burgle treasures and recruit thief action. They can be done by multiple people, multiple times, until the supply is gone. Once all players have passed, the last phase is the cleanup phase. Each player will take the thief tokens from the location cards in front of them and place them on their player boards. Then place the location cards face down to the left of your board. And do the same thing for the fence cards and place the fence cards to the right of your player board. From the main board, move any treasure tokens from the power tiles, witch area, or recruit a thief section back to the supply. Move any thieves from the burgle a treasure location back to the supply as well. Remove the top power tiles and flip over the next 3. And finally, the player with the fewest prestige points becomes the new first player and is given the direction tile, which is then flipped over. At the end of 3 rounds, the game is over. All players reveal their fence cards they have collected, and for each type, see which player has the most and they get prestige points for majority based on this chart on the board. If there is a tie, no one gets the points. Next, all players reveal their scheme and location cards and get prestige points for the sets, as shown on their scheme card. Then, the player with the most prestige is the winner. Now let's get back to see what I thought about Thieves Den.
So first let's talk about theme and components. The theme is fun and well done. What you're doing just makes sense. Sending your underlings to steal treasures from different locations, to offer them up defenses to get favor for them at the end of the game. Now the mechanisms don't exactly match the theme, but you know what, the theme is so easy and understandable that you can explain the game using the theme, which is always nice, as it just makes sense. Now on to the components. They are top notch. Now the art I really enjoyed, and I also like that there's so much of it. See, these are all the location cards. There's a fair number of location cards. Not every card is unique, but there is enough variety in here that there is some really good looking art in here, or even on the board. I'm not sure if you can see this, but there are kind of little people all over this board that makes it look really nice. People are, walking the streets and, singing out windows, walking their dogs, that kind of thing. All the other components are, again, super high marks. All in all, high marks for the components all around for this game. Now let's talk about gameplay. Now from the walkthrough, you saw that this game is pretty light and quick. With it only being 3 rounds, it ended up being a good length of, 30 to 45 minutes. And honestly, for how light this game is, that's perfect. I wouldn't want it any longer. Now there were lots of things I enjoyed about this game. The drafting is fun and quick. The cards, for the most part, aren't overly complicated, save for a few, and honestly, at the back of the rulebook, they explain any of the complicated ones, and that just made the drafting quick. The ability to put your thieves on another location is also really fun as well. I mean, are the treasures you're getting, or stopping your opponent from getting, really worth giving up a thief for? Now, there were different decisions to be made during this phase, but again, none of them overly complicated, but enough to keep you engaged with the game. The player interaction was good as well. There is some take that elements of the game, usually through the locations. I mean, there are a few locations that allow you to affect other players, like steal a resource from them, or they lose a thief, but those are few and far between. So the take that element really doesn't overwhelm the game. The other type of player action that comes with, either worker placement or the drafting is just at the right level. There never seems to be a bad spot or card you can get, but you maybe not get the exact spot or card that you needed. But there's almost always something good you can do, which for worker placement games of this complexity is nice. And watching what treasures your opponents are collecting is useful as well. Are they collecting the same treasures as you? I've been caught with this many times. And will they be able to get to the fence first? And usually that's not a huge deal, because there's only 5 different treasure types, and all the fences want some combination of them. You may not get the prime one you're going for, but if you're watching, maybe you can swoop in and get it before your opponent. I thought that was really fun, of that kind of stealing the fences from underneath people's noses if they weren't paying attention. And the other spaces on the board will always help you out as well. I mean, getting more thieves is always good if you no longer need a treasure on your board because maybe you lost a fence, or the witch is a good way to get rid of useless treasures you no longer need for a quick jump in prestige points or victory points. I only have a few minor drawbacks to the game. The first is some of the iconography, especially on the power tiles. Again, luckily at the back of the book, they describe all the power cards in detail, and once you play the game once or twice, it's going to be easy enough to explain. But if you're using this as an intro game, the people probably are going to be needed to being reminded of what those power tiles do. Another minor drawback to the game is replayability. Now, don't get me wrong, this game is fun, but most of the location cards are just kind of variations of the same thing. The same with the fences. None of them seem to be unique at all. I mean, why not have some extra hard fences that were worth a lot of points, but required like 4 to 5 of the same treasures, which is more difficult to get? I just wish there was a bit more variety in the type of locations and fences, or maybe advanced character cards or powers that would change up how the players approach the game. You know, something to change it up from game to game. So, would I recommend this game? I would, with the understanding that this is a light, quick, fun game. I like the quickness of the game, and this would work perfect as a filler at only 30 to 45 minutes, but still gives you some good decision points in the game that are applicable to the complexity of this game. Nothing is going to burn your brain. The worker placement angst, that is worrying if someone's going to take your spot before you can get there, is fun, and luckily there's almost always another good spot to go to. I like that I felt engaged with what the other players were doing, as I want to make sure they beat them to get a fence card, or I needed to switch gears based on what they were doing, or maybe I needed to use one of their buildings to get the treasures from them or stop them from getting. Now, I wasn't as fond of the iconography, and the first game or two you're going to have to look some of that up. And again, if you're using this as an intro game, that's a little bit of a hurdle to get through that people have to remember, but it's, again, not a big deal. And the last one is the replayability of the game. I wanted more from it. But I also understand that this is intended as a good, solid family weight game that doesn't want to overcomplicate the game. So with all that, I'm giving this a 7.5 out of 10 and the Dice Tower seal of approval. If you're looking for a good family weight game that is quick, fun, and looks great on the table, definitely check Thieves Den out. And that's it for the moment. As always, thanks for watching.